Hi, my name is Glenn Culp and this is my camera collection. I've had a lifelong obsession with photography. I guess that's more serious than a hobby. And I have collected cameras and all sorts of photographic paraphernalia for many years. I'm planning to donate this collection to the Cherokee County Historical Museum. So that's why I'm doing this little video now. I'm just going to talk about it a little bit and then I'll be able to give it to them and have this little memento of what I spent many years doing. And that was scrounging around and picking up used cameras here, there, and everywhere. I'm just going to talk about things a little bit. This one is my oldest camera. It's probably a 1902, could be 1903, Kodak Vest Pocket camera. These earlier cameras were all bellows style cameras. This was an autographic model, which meant that you could open up this window on the back. You may not be able to see that very well. Take out the little stylus, scratch a note onto the paper that backed up the actual film, scratch through the paper with your note. You could say Aunt Betty, July 18th, 1903. Hold the camera up to the sun. That would burn the image of your note into the negative itself. Close the door, put your stylus back in, advance to the next frame. And then when you had the film processed, your little note would show up right on the picture. You've probably seen this on older pictures and wondered, how the heck did they do that? We can't even do that today with our new digital cameras. So pretty amazing. It was a Kodak invention called the autographic feature. There were lots of different bellows cameras, and I've got 5 or 6 of them here. They incorporated the same sort of technology and mechanics. I don't think anybody was coming up with anything super new on any of these. Most of them had this old lantern style viewfinder where you could, it was all waist level viewing back then. You could look down and get a vertical picture. You could turn the little lantern for a horizontal picture. Some of the later models, like this one, actually allowed you to adjust your shutter speed and even do a little bit with your aperture. Open and close it to change your exposure. The bellows on all of these cameras are beautiful, except my very oldest one, 1902. I would say most of these cameras are all pre-1925. Then we get into the Argus C3 collection. I have 3 models. I have a pre-World War II and a post-World War II, and this one, which was probably made in the 60s. This was Argus's crowning achievement, the C3. Over 25 million of these were sold. It was the most popular camera in history. Virtually everybody had them. Lots of new features that earlier cameras did not have, like a range-coupled viewfinder, so you could focus using a split-image viewfinder, and everything would be coupled together and automatic, and your pictures would always be in focus. Adjustable shutter speeds and f-stops allowed you to get great exposures in almost any conditions. Extremely durable. Lots of war correspondents used these in the Second World War. 1960s saw a flood of this kind of camera. This is an Ansco model. Very cheap, simple, easy to use. I had one myself, not this exact model, but very similar to it in the 60s. I took lots of pictures with it, and the pictures were pretty good. They used 127 film, which had a pretty good size negative, so you could enlarge them up to picture size and have a good clear picture. This probably looks familiar to almost everyone. You're thinking it's a Kodak Brownie. It's not. It's an Ansco Sure Shot, virtually the same camera. Again, waist level viewing, vertical or horizontal. Very simple, almost no adjustments to be made at all, except being able to pull a yellow filter in front of the lens, which made your blue sky darker and made the clouds pop out. Otherwise, you just push the shutter, took a picture. I love this camera. It's very retro. I like the design. It was designed by someone named Raymond Lowry, I believe, who also designed the Studebaker Avanti, which was very modern and upscale automobile at the time. What I like about it is these metal shutters that protect the viewfinder and the lenses. You slid this up, uncover your lenses, and you're ready to take a picture. Had a very big viewfinder, same size as the negative, real super clear, great camera. It's a similar camera here made by the Spartus Corporation. A little cheaper though, these cameras probably sold for half of what the Anscos did. Here's another Argus. This is an A model. it isn't like the A's came first and the C's came next. They evolved side by side. The C's were the more popular camera. Everybody liked them. They liked the technological look to them, and sold so many, like I told you before. These were more along the lines of the European styling, had a built-in light meter and a hot shoe for an electronic flash. This was probably a 1960s version here. Also had quick rewind. Didn't have to turn any knobs to advance to the next frame. This may have been produced at the same time as the Matchmatic C3, somewhere in the mid-60s. This was a late model Ansco. Ansco was a great camera company, but they finally went under in the late 1980s and sold out to a company called HeyKing out of China. So China started making all sorts of cheap, junky cameras with the Ansco name on them. This is a brand new one, never used, but I'm sure the pictures that it would take would be awful. So that's why I never used it to take pictures. But I held on to it anyway, just to show what had happened to a great camera company like Ansco. How low they were laid by HeyKing, Chinese company. This is a disc camera. Kodak came out with these things to replace the Instamatic. The Instamatic was wildly popular, but I don't have one. These cameras here were full of new technology. Automatic film advance, very small disc type film, easy to replace and load and unload. What else did they have? They had a built-in exposure meter which automatically sets your exposure, your aperture, and built-in electronic flash. They're reasonably expensive. These things cost about 60 bucks. The problem with them was they took terrible, terrible pictures because the negative was only about this big. With that small a negative, when you blow it up to normal picture size, it's going to be all grainy and full of distortion and just awful. So anyway, even though they sold a lot of them, they could see the writing on the wall, and they eventually just pulled the plug on it and gave up. They knew it wasn't going to be a lasting thing. Although originally this was going to be the next big thing in photography. Kodak had great plans for the disc camera. Okay, I've got a few instant cameras over here. The only reason I have these out here is because the Swinger was the first instant camera that was available to the masses, that just about anybody could afford. 1995. I don't know if you remember the little jingle. I'm not going to sing it for you, but Barry Manilow sung it, and Ali McGraw was walking on the beach in her bikini swinging one of these swingers. Very simple camera to use. You adjusted your exposure with this little red dial. You looked through the viewfinder. When it said yes, you knew you had enough light, and then you go ahead, boom, take your picture. You could also put a flash bulb in it for if conditions were too dark or you were inside. Took 8 pictures on a roll, and you would stick your thumb in here, pull it out, and the picture actually processed itself outside the camera, which was new for Polaroid. Kodak didn't much care for Polaroid getting all the instant camera markets, so they came out with this. They came out with the handle first, and this was the handle too. They only made these instant cameras between 1979 and 1981 because they infringed on so many Polaroid patents that Polaroid sued and won, and Kodak had to cease operations of all instant cameras and film. Plus they had to pay almost $1 billion fine. This was the camera that followed the Swinger in the 1970s. Still $39.95, not very expensive. Had a few new features to it. Had a built-in exposure meter, used cartridge film instead of roll film, and it kicked the picture out automatically. In other words, you'd take the picture and boom, it'd pop right out of there and then appear before your eyes. So that's it. That's my whole collection. It's going to the Cherokee County Historical Museum with my blessings, and that's all I've got. Thanks for listening.